Hi guys, today we're going to learn about linear inequalities. So in this section, I will solve a linear inequality and graph it on a number line. I will put linear inequalities in interval notation and go over the difference between a union and an intersection. So let's begin. So what is a linear inequality? An example would be something like this, right? We have an example of a linear inequality. Is like 3x, 3 times parentheses 3x minus 5 is greater than equal to x plus 7 minus 10. So remember, like, inequalities, just remember inequalities has that greater sign, equal or less than, equal or greater or less than. That's how you know you're dealing with an inequality. So basically in this section we're going to solve for x. We're going to graph it and put it in interval notation. So before we do that, let's go over some rules. So remember, when you're graphing an interval, an inequality, here are some rules of the interval notation. So when you're dealing with brackets meaning included, like from A to B, or like 5 to 2, right? In inequality notation, it would look something like this, right? X is greater than equal to A and less than equal to B. And then when you graph it on a line, you make sure you always put that bracket, or you can also use a dark circle because they're the same thing. It just means it's closed, it's included. This one, the one that's closed or included is A, and the one that's not included is B. So in inequality notation, it will look something like this. And in line graph, notice that the A is bracket and the B is parentheses. You could also use for open is open circle. So here's another one from A to B. The A is open and the B is bracket, and this is what's called half open. So here's for A, it's open, so you're going to use a parentheses or open circle, same thing. For bracket, for the closed one, you can use a bracket or a dark circle. And over here, they're both open. That means they're not included. So your example would always be not included would be infinity, negative infinity to positive infinity. So on a number line, it would look something like this, and it's open. What about, okay, so this all probably doesn't make sense right now, but when you graph it, it'll all make sense. So here you have a B that's included and a parenthesis that's so infinity is not included. So this is a closed one, and then you just simply do the bracket B and then go, for the infinity, you just set it to the right. From here, B, none of them are included. B is a parentheses, infinity is in parentheses, so you're saying x is greater than B, and then you just simply do parentheses and then you move the arrow to the right. Let's see here. So now we're going to deal with from negative infinity and A bracket. So that means from negative infinity to A, and A is included, so it's closed, so it's going to look something like this. So it's going to say like x is less than or equal to A. What happens when it's negative infinity to A, so it's like saying x is less than A, so it's going to look like this, and on the line graph it's from negative infinity to A, and A is not included, so it's parentheses. And note, like I said before, bracket means included, and it also means that you can also use it as a dark circle, and parentheses means not included. You can also use an open circle for that one as well. So let's actually do some problems. Oh, before we gotta go over unions and intersections. These are really simple. So just remember when you're dealing with unions, an example would be like A union B, and then in numbers, if you had a 1 2 1 2 3 union 2 3 4 5, you just have to write it all the numbers once. That means it just means everything's included. That's what union really means. So over here you have a 1 2 3, and then it has, notice how 2 repeats. We just have to write that once. So it's just going to be 1 2 3 4 5. That's a union. Now intersection is a little bit different. So let's say you have an A intersect B. So let's say we have a point, this 1 2 3, which is our A, and then it intersects 2 3 4 5. You just have to remember the number that repeats, like 2 over here, 2 over here. You just have to write it once, and that's your intersection. And then we have a 3 here that repeats as well. So that's why we have from 2 to 3. So that's what an intersection is. Simple so far. Okay, so let's actually do some problems here. The question says rewrite inequality in notation and graph it on a real line number. So we got to write it in notation form, and we got to write it in a number line. So we are given bracket negative infinity to positive infinity. So what does that mean in notation form? In notation form, it's like saying x is greater than equal to -6, and the reason why I use included greater than equal to -6 is because of this bracket. So you're going from negative infinity to 6, so that means you're saying x is greater than equal to -6. How could you write this on a number line? Simple. Let's see here. We have a -6, and then we have a bracket, right? You can also use dark circle, it's the same thing. And then which way you're going? To the right. So that's how you write it in a number line. What about this one? Let's say you're given x is less than equal to -2. So it's already in notation format, so I just got to put it in a number line. I have to graph it in a number line, right? So I just simply have to graph it on number line. So let's graph it. It will probably look something like this. So here's -2. We can use a bracket. And then which way are we going? Right or left? We are going left. Bracket to here. You can also, remember how I said you can use open circle and dark circle? So let's do the one with it, circles. Here's -2, it's dark circle, and we're just going this way. Either graph is good enough, because they're the same thing. Okay, let's do this one. This one, they give us a graph, and then we have to put it in notation form and on okay, so they give us a number line, right? So here it is. So here's our number line, and they say that it's from 0 bracket, and then we're going from to the left. So how do you write this in notation? In notation form. It's like saying negative infinity, right? Because it's going from negative infinity, and then it stops at 0, and then we're not going to use a parentheses. We're going to use a bracket because it's included, and that's like really saying x is less than equal to 0, right? Here's 0 less than equal to 0. so let's do another one. Oops, okay. Okay, so let me see. Did I do this one? Write an interval and inequality. Yeah, that I done this one. Yeah, I already done this one. So now let's do this one. Solve and graph. So here we have an inequality, and we gotta solve for t. We gotta graph it. Okay, so let's see here. We have like two parts, this part and this part. Our goal is to solve for t, so what I'm going to first do is subtract 6. Now remember how I said there's two parts, so we have to do it both sides, the right side and the left side. Oops, why did I put -2? So -4 minus 6 is what? -10 less than 5t, this cancels, less than equal to 21 minus 6 is 15. Okay, now remember, when we're subtracting a negative, we don't change the sign. Only when we divide or multiply by a negative, we flip the sign. So now my last step is to get t by itself, so I have to divide 5 on both sides, right and left. So -5 divided by 5 is -2. Sign does not change. T is by itself, and it's less than equal to 15 divided by 5 is 3. Now, how you're saying, now this looks weird, right? T is less. What they're saying is, if you have it like this, it's like saying t is less than equal to 3, and then t is also, now this part is flipped, so it's like saying t is greater than -2. So yeah, this part stays the same, but this part just flips. That's what they're really saying. T is less than equal to 3, and then t is greater than -2. So now we could just graph it on a number line. So here's -2, my smallest number, and here's 3. So 3 is less than equal to, so we're going to use a bracket, right? And then here's -2, and we're going to use a parentheses because there's no equal sign. Now, less than equal to 2 is going this way, and then t is greater than -2 is going that way, so it's going to connect. So that's how you write it, like this, and then an interval notation form, it's going to be from parentheses -2 to 3, bracket. Simple, right? Just algebra and graphing. Okay, so now let's do another one. Graph the indicated set and write it as a single interval, single interval if possible. So we have from -infinity to 4, parentheses union, -1 to 6 bracket. So what they're saying is they want it in just one single interval notation. So I can say, so you're going from -infinity to +4 to -1. So what is my smallest number? That's how you do this when you write it in single interval. What's my smallest number? -infinity. What's my biggest number? 6. And 6 is included, so you're going to use a bracket. So that's how you write it in a single interval. And then they say graph it on a number line. Pretty simple, right? So here's 6, right? And we're going to use parentheses or bracket. And then it's going from -infinity, so we're just going to move the arrow to the left. And there you go. That's how you graph this one. Let me see. You can also do, if you wanted to, you can do dark circle, right? And then move it to the left. They're the same thing. So that was that one. What about this one? Okay, so, whoops, sorry. Let's go back. Now, the direction, same, for this problem, same direction, but different problem. So graph, yeah, same idea, graph the indicated set and write as a single interval, but this time we're getting a notation. We're given -1 to 4. We're going to use 4 is not included, so it's going to be parentheses. This won't be a union. This is going to be an intersection, because an intersection means it's the opposite of u, right? I mean, it's actually, yeah, the opposite of u. And 2 parentheses 2 comma 6 bracket, right? Remember, this u means union, and then this opposite u means intersection. Intersection. So now let's see. So remember the rule for unions is okay. Let's focus. Let's focus on this -1 to 4. What are all the numbers from -1 to 4? What are all the numbers? Wouldn't it be just you start from -1 and then you go from 0, right? Because you have to go positive. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Those are all the numbers for this interval. Now let's focus on the number. We'll do union. Focus, what are all the numbers on this interval? 2 to 6. It's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're doing union, intersection, so do you see any the number that repeats? You just have to write it once. So do you see any number that repeats? I see a 2 that repeats, so we have a 2 here. What else do you see? I see just a 2 and a 4, because we have a 4 here and a 4 here. So ours is going to be from 2, comma 4. Okay, the reason why I'm using parentheses is because from -1, -1's included, and then from there, parentheses, 4 is parentheses, and then from here, 2 to 4 is parentheses or not included, so that's why I'm using parentheses, not bracket. Now we know our interval. Let's graph it on a number line. So here's 2 and 4. Are we going to use bracket or parentheses? Parentheses, right? And then you're just going to connect the dot. You can also use open circle, sorry. These are all open circle, and then you can connect the dot. They're the same thing. And I think we have one more problem, and then that's it for this section. So the problem says we want to solve and graph. So let's see here. Solve and graph. Let's see. We have -2 less than 3/4. 2 minus x is less than or equal to 24. So what I want to do is get rid of this 4, or this fraction. So what I can do is multiply, and I'm going to use brackets, because bracket means everything. Multiply everything by 4. Actually, I want this whole 3/4 gone, so I can multiply everything by the reciprocal of 3/4, which is 4/3, right? And then you get over here, you get a negative 16, because 4/3 times negative 12 is negative 16. Sign does not change. And then 3/4 times this, it just cancels, right? So you're just left with 2 minus x less than or equal to, and then 24 times 4/3 is 32. Good. And now let's see here. I want to get x by itself, so I gotta remove this too. So I gotta subtract 2 from both sides, from right and left. So you're left with here negative 18 less than the sign change, and then you have a negative x less than or equal to 32 minus 2 is 30. We're not done yet. See this negative? This is like negative 1 times x, so let's get rid of that negative. So we're going to divide everything by negative 1. So what happens when you divide or multiply by negative? The sign changes. So this is going to be, the x is positive now. The sign changes because when you divide or multiply by negative, it just changes. 30 divided by negative 1 is negative 30. Over here, the sign changes as well, so it's going to be negative 18 divided by negative 1 is positive 18. So what you're saying, when you have it like this, you're really saying this part stays the same. So it's x is greater than or equal to negative 30, and then this part flips. So it's going to be x is not going to be greater, it's going to be less than 18. Now we know how to, now we can graph it on a number line. So here's the smallest number, which is negative 30, and then our biggest number is 18. Let's see here, we can use, so for the 18 we're going to use parentheses because there's no equal sign. And then for the 30, negative 30, we're going to use bracket. Now, this x is greater than, we're going to move it to the right. So I think, yeah, it connects. So x is less than, so it's going to connect and look something like this. Or you can also do dark circle, open circle, and then connect the dot. That's the same thing. So, yep, that wraps it up for this section.